Ever wonder what happens when a wraith goes to heaven? Unlike all dogs, most ghostly undead creatures don't go towards the light and instead opt for skulking in the shadows where they can possess, terrify, or otherwise haunt the living, which is honestly super rude. But there is one creature that truly breaks the mold when it comes to spectral undead, and they are one of the weirdest one-off monsters to ever see the pages of an official D&D book. Darklights were first printed in the Planescape Monstrous Compendium for AD&D, and if you've never read any of the pre-5th edition Planescape books, they're super fucking weird. And that's by no means an insult. Planescape has always been a setting that seems to pride itself on being the weirdest family member at the dinner table. There is a lot of lore to go over here, but to put it as simply as possible, Planescape as a setting really fleshed out the planar landscape of D&D, adding a bunch of new planes to the cosmology and a bunch of new details to the existing ones, all of which are accessible through Sigil, the City of Doors, which acts as a sort of hub world between pretty much every dimension there is. And yeah, I know it's pronounced sigil, but I am ungovernable, and I would never say that. Just flipping through this book, the art immediately clocks as different. Personally, I love the Planescape art style, but take it or leave it, it has a very strong identity, and on page 29, we see today's subject. The artwork is so evocative, this shadowy figure draped in radiant light just does such a good job of making you say, what the heck is that? And to answer that question, we gotta talk about some planes of existence. The quasi-elemental plane of radiance is one of 8 quasi-planes, in much the same way that the 4 para-elemental planes form the border between the planes of fire, water, earth, and air. The quasi-planes form the border between the elemental planes and the plane of positive energy, as well as the plane of negative energy, respectively. And between the plane of fire and the positive energy plane is the plane of radiance. The plane of radiance is a brilliant dimension of blinding light. The creatures that live there are usually made of light, or at least take no discomfort from staring into something as brilliant as the sun 24/7. Now when a creature in D&D dies, their spirit usually goes to a place determined by which god they were devoted to, or lacking that, their species, their deeds, and how they live their life. But in the event of a harrowing and traumatic death, or some dark magic shenaniganery, the creature's spirit can end up in the gaping maw of the negative energy plane and become twisted into an incorporeal undead creature like a ghost or a wraith. And while such a creature is often doomed to suffer there for all time, no plane is a perfect lockbox, and there are frequent leaks between the planes themselves. These leaks don't often last for very long, but when the plane filled with ghosts leaks into another plane, any of those undead creatures who happen to be around are liable to sprint through that crack in reality to try and get somewhere less shitty than the plane of eternal entropy. But as planar creatures, their essence is bound to the plane of bad vibes, so they are inexorably pulled back and unable to stay wherever it is they try to escape to. However, the plane of radiance creates something of a cosmic loophole. When an incorporeal undead creature wanders through a portal into the plane of radiance, the essence of the plane envelops them and counteracts the darkness within. This doesn't make them not undead, and it doesn't change them into a good guy who just wants to hang out and look at the sun. They are still malevolent, evil spirits who feed on the life force of living creatures to sustain themselves, but they are no longer bound to the negative energy plane in the same way they once were, so they're just kind of free to wander everywhere. And this is one of the things that makes Darklights so bizarre. They are a walking contradiction, a creature infused with the essence of undeath and entropy, as well as radiance and the raw power of shining fire and light. Speaking of things that are shiny, check out this watch from Holzkern. If you haven't heard of Holzkern, they're an Austrian company that specializes in watches and jewelry for both men and women, made from natural materials like gems, wood, stone, and even leaves. This not only results in some really cool pieces, but also ensures that every product is genuinely unique. Just check out this awesome watch they sent me. It's slick, elegant, and has a lovely marble and silver face that makes it really stand out. I've been wearing this for about a month, and it has been a fantastic addition to my daily wardrobe. They also sent me one of their bodyguard necklaces, which I specifically requested because I've been looking for a chain like this for a while. See, I have this ring I got for my mom as a Christmas gift like like 20 years ago, and ever since she passed away, I have been wearing it around my neck on a simple metal chain. The only problem is that I've gone through like 3 of these things in the past couple years because they kept breaking or clasps would come loose. And apparently, finding a chain that is relatively simple but also not a piece of garbage is impossible. Or so I thought. This chain from Holzkern is exactly what I was looking for, and it even has a genuine piece of meteorite embedded within, which is awesome. Bodyguard definitely feels like an appropriate name for this because it is durable and it looks great. Everything Holzkern makes is also made in small batches and is ethically produced, and even though they're way out in Vienna, which statistically is pretty far away from where most of you are, they offer free worldwide 5 to 9 day shipping and prepaid customs for the United States. All orders placed by December 19th are guaranteed to arrive by Christmas Day. Also, as this week's sponsor, they're giving all of you guys 15% off the entire store if you use my code DungeonDad, which you can do by following the link in the description and checking out what they have to offer for yourself. Thank you so much to Holzkern for sponsoring this week's video about mysterious creatures of light from beyond the pale. Speaking of which, let's get back to it and see how these creatures actually function. Darklights are incredibly nasty in a lot of different ways. They can fly super fast and are either resistant or immune to most types of damage. They're also intelligent, so they can straight up communicate verbally, and they can also form complex plots and schemes. As far as dealing damage goes, they can swipe with their claws, which deal 2d6 plus 3 slashing, a d10 necrotic, and 2d4 radiant damage for an average total of 20 damage per hit. You might be wondering why the dice are so weird for this attack, and that is because in my 5e conversion, I wanted each damage type to roll a different dice so that you don't just have a handful of dice, toss them in your tray and say, wait a minute, which of these d6s were the radiant and which ones were the necrotic damage? Also, rolling a bunch of dice is fun. Yeah, DMs like to roll dice too. Much like the Wraith, it can also use Life Drain, which is just some raw necrotic damage that also reduces the target's max HP, and in the case of the Darklight, gives them some temporary hit points. But the real thing you want to be terrified of when it comes to the Darklight is its spell casting. This thing can cast Dancing Lights, Color Spray, Invisibility, Prismatic Spray, and Prismatic Wall. Prismatic Wall might not be the most TPK-inducing 9th level spell, but it is still a 9th level spell. It can also use an ability called Scintillating Gaze, which is more or less a flashbang that blinds the target for a round on a failed Constitution save, and if you fail by 5 or more, you actually just get blinded permanently. Add in some incorporeal movement, and I think you've got a pretty good picture of the threat that we're dealing with here. Thankfully, they are almost entirely solitary in nature. They do not hang out with other creatures, and they rarely ever spend long periods of time around others of their own kind. The only exception to their solitude would seem to be a creature called a Skyle. Sile? Let's go with Sile. These swarms of living ping pong balls made of light are a creature native to the plane of radiance. They're mostly just a nuisance on account of the fact that they eat color, and since the Darklight is constantly leaking light that spans the entire spectrum of colors, they're naturally drawn to them. So on occasion, Darklights will form a relationship with a colony of Sile in much the same way a shark might form a relationship with a school of those weird little fish that hang out on their belly. The Sile get a mobile food source, and the Darklight gets a school of creatures that will come to its defense if threatened. Now these guys can make for great random encounters on the plane of radiance or the plane of fire for that matter. They are connected after all, but we all know that barring the plane they reside on, the next most likely place to encounter a malevolent spirit is gonna be on the material plane. A Darklight can be a great way to mix up the classic haunted location trope. They can easily be used as just another type of ghost to catch the players off guard. They might be going into a ghost hunt thinking they know what to expect, only to get hit with a Darklight encounter, which might throw their entire plan out of whack. Not just because this is a creature who is immune to radiant damage, but also because they can't be banished like most other spirits can. See, this tie that they have with the plane of radiance has nullified whatever mechanism exists within extraplanar creatures that allows them to be dismissed back to their plane of origin, so a Darklight who is subject to a spell or effect that would banish them is entirely immune. That alone can make for a pretty cool mix-up on a ghostly encounter, but it also presents some interesting story implications. Maybe the Darklight was summoned by a necromancer doing what necromancers do, but he lost control of it, and now even the summoner can't get rid of the thing. It could also be a chance for some characters who aren't normally great at dealing with spiritual undead to shine, as they use some abilities that are more suitable for contending with the Darklight compared to what they would normally be dealing with in some other kind of ghost. As a creature of light, it could also be an interesting way to change up the typical undead tropes by having this creature operate primarily during the daytime, in broad daylight, committing whatever deeds it intends to commit during high noon when the sun is at its brightest. There's just something extra terrifying about a ghost operating at lunchtime. And if your party is the type to try and help a spiritual undead creature pass on so that they can rest in peace by avenging it or fixing whatever circumstances led to its undeath in the first place, have fun dealing with the Radiant Technicolor Ghost while you do that. But no matter how you choose to use this monster, as always, the link to my 5th edition conversion is in the description down below. And if you are one of my lovely patrons over on the Dungeon Dad Patreon, you can of course find the high-res PDF stat block, which contains all the same game information as my Google document does, but it's just my way of saying thank you to those who helped me make this channel possible. Literally couldn't do it without your support. I also gotta give a shout out to the viewer who helped make this video happen. This person had a great idea for a video and did not give up until it finally made it onto the show. Shouts out to the Ideal of Greed. They have left a comment on every single video I have made for the past 3 years, hyping up Darklights, and with the holidays now upon us, in the spirit of community, I figured it was finally time we make this one happen. A genuine real one who has been around since this channel was very small, and as tempting as it is to keep the bit going, I hope I did this monster justice. I love the enthusiasm. Now you gotta pick something else for me to cover in, say, 2029? Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate it so much. And as always, if there is a monster you'd like to see show up on the channel, leave a comment on this video and every other video I make until it happens. That's all I got for you this week. Till next time.